we deal with them, work with them. Key events, JavaScript key events. And yeah, so various examples I given you means key up, key down, key press, how they are managed and used technically. Next, after understanding the key events, so one more option is we need to know about various miscellaneous events. Miscellaneous events we learned. So like we have on click, on DBL click. These are miscellaneous. On context menu. So on select, right? On select start. So on change. So on blur, on focus, on cut, on copy, all these things, on paste, on submit, and on reset. All these are the miscellaneous events. So depending on different situations, different requirements, we use these events actually. The click, double click, context menu, select start, usually. Actually, we have used it everywhere. We already learned on click. DBL click is nothing but double click. On double click, what action to perform? Context menu means right click. Select means user selects the content, selection. So this is dragging selection. You are dragging the selection. Select start. Change means when value is changed. Value changes. So blur means when element lost focus. And on focus means when element get focus. When element loses the focus and when element get the focus, what actions to perform? Copy paste, their name itself tell what they are. We will see one example, how do we handle them. That means where they are used. So usually, already you saw click in various examples. So that means what? Suppose I am adding a new file here. So events.html. And so we configured a simple design. Let's see, right? So doc type HTML head, and title some events. And in the body section, so we have an image source. And in the images, so we have some shoe.jpg. And width is some 50 and height is also 50. And below that, we just kept a paragraph and say, double click on image to view large, something like this. And that means usually what should happen is when user double clicks on the image, when user double click on the image, it should open in a separate window. So when user double clicks on that, it should open in a separate window. So technically, in order to do that, so just you have to write double click. That means usually in events on image, we can write on DBL click, means double click. On double click, so here you can directly write window.open. So only one functionality you can directly write. What to open? So // images / shoe.jpg, and it should open. What should be the title? So title is like shoe. Okay. What should be the width and height? Width is equal to some 400 and height is equal to some 300, like this. So I written inline only, directly inline we have written it. So when I run this, you can see when I double click on that image, it opens in a separate window. It opens in a separate window. Width and height, you need to define how much width and height. So here I given the width and height here. So suppose so 500 and 400, and when I double click, it will open that width and height. The image will open in that width and height. So usually, so double click indicates the actions to perform here. Right. So usually, so double click specifies the actions to perform when you double click on particular element. You can use like open, close. So several options can be controlled on double click. So that we can manage by using DBL click. So that is done by using DBL click. DBL click indicates what action to perform on double click. Similarly, we have options like select context menu. Context menu means right click, select, start, cut, copy, paste, these options. In many interviews, one question regularly comes is actually, currently you can see I will put a heading here. So say you cannot copy copy our content. That's just a message I give it. But you observe here, I can currently I can select it. Selection is working. I can right click in it. Right click also working. So I can copy that. So now in many interviews they ask this question: how you can disable selection, how you can disable right click so that user cannot open this right click. So disabling selection, disabling cut copy, and disabling selection, and right click also should be disabled. User should not able to right click. This is a regular question. Then usually what we can do here is simply in the body section, we have to write the events on context menu. Context menu means right click. On right click, what should happen? If you want to disable right click, any functionality if you want to disable, you have to return. So return, you have to return false. That's it. If any event is defined with return false, that event is not allowed. It will return false. That means right click is not allowed. On context menu, it returns false. Right click is not working here. Similarly, we have to write on select start is return false. Select start means when the user is trying to drag And on select also, on select return false. Sometimes user will select with a double click also user can select. On select return false, on select start, on context menu return false. Similarly, on cut, so on cut return false, on copy return false, copy return false. All these you set return false. On paste, so you return false, you return false. Once they are set to return false, all of them means only what you need, right and all. For example, now see here, when I double click is working fine, no problem. So now I try to select here, it is not selecting. You see, I am clicking and dragging, it's not working. Selection is not working. I try to right click. I am trying right click in the page. It's not working. Right click is not working. So we disabled right click in the page. We disable selection in the page. Selection in the page. These are general things, but important is it is not only the security, because generally so many problems will be there related to. We can prevent up to certain limits. Everything cannot be prevented. Why? Because generally every security can be hacked actually. We have solution for them, but up to certain limit prevent it. So you will not allow to right click, you will not allow to select, you will not allow any cut copy operations. Good. That means we are defining that. We are defining that here. So we are defining that by using these options. So whenever you are trying to tell you cannot cut, you cannot copy, you cannot paste, you cannot right click, you have to set return false. Set return false. Once you set return false, then those operations cannot be performed. It is a very very regularly asked question also. In interviews, regularly they ask how we can disable all this. So that is one solution, how you can disable. So we need to use these events and set the events to return false actually. So I will give for that. Right. So an example. So this is a simple example to understand how we can disable the selection, disable the options like this. So these are the general miscellaneous. Blur, focus are also very common. Actually, blur, focus are nothing but. So suppose I am designing some text box. Suppose let's create another example. Blur, focus, one example here. I am creating a doc type HTML head and the title so blur. Okay. And in the body section, so we are designing some field set and legend. So username. And I given here a text box, input type is equal to text. So and placeholder, I just defined name in block letters. That's the text box. And ID is equal to txt name. So our intention here is user should enter the name in capital letters. But once I click here and starts typing something, that placeholder is no longer available. That means that placeholder is not displayed. So then I need to keep an alert until it gets focus, until it is in focus actually. Then what I can do is, so here I will keep a simple span and the ID is MSG. And in this, what we will do is, so name in block letters. Okay. Now see, what we will do is here, by default, it should not be displayed. Then style initially display as none. So initially that message will not be displayed there. So when a text box on focus means when text box gets focus, means when user clicks inside text box, then show a tip, that is the message should work. Then I am writing a function here, script, so function. So here we are writing show tip, and what should happen is, so I need to access document get element by ID msg dot style dot display should be blocked, or display should be inline. I should display inline. I should keep it inline. That means we want to display that message there. Block means it will come to next line, you know that. So here, so, and very important is, so when on focus, right, you see here, observe here, when I click inside that text box, then that message will come. So while I am typing, it will be there. Because placeholder will be removed, I need to keep the message. I click outside it, then it should hide. That means on blur. Blur means losing the focus. So I am writing here on blur. On blur equal to hide tip. This message should happen. So that means here we will write a function again. So, and the same function, that is hide tip. And it should display none. It should display none. And you can see now what happens is, I click inside the text box, that message will come. I click outside, then it is gone. So while I am typing, it is displayed. When I click outside, it is gone. Not only that, one more point is, but you said it should be in block letters, and they are typing something, it is not in capital letters. Click outside, it is still there without capital letter. Now what we can do is, once you lose the focus, not only hiding message, I want to convert this text into capital letters. Then what we can do is, first we can access txt name, document get element by ID, txt name, dot, a txt name is text box. We are accessing the text box. And what we are doing is, message also, in the no need of message, text box is there. Now what we have to do is, txt name is text box. Okay. We are not defining value, only text box. Now txt name dot value, txt name dot value is equal to txt name dot value. What is this technique actually? Why you are writing like this? That means I will give you in a more simplified way to make you easy understand. See, I am accessing the text box value. That means whatever value entered in text box, that is collected in txt name. Okay, after that, document get element by ID txt name dot value is equal to txt name. That means whatever the name you collected, it is again assigned to same text box. The value you collected from text box is again assigned to the same text box. It is again assigned to the same text box. But this time, the value you assigned to the same text box, it should be to uppercase. To uppercase is a string function. it will convert that into uppercase. It will convert that into the uppercase. Usually it is converting that into uppercase. So that is what actually it happens. Now see here, when I run this, what will happen here when I run this, you can see, right? So you can see. So technically when it happens, you can see that. So I will click inside it. Okay, name in block letters. And I am trying to type something here. So I'm trying to type something here. So that means I will type something here, David. Okay. And I click outside, then the message will hide. At the same time, the text is converted into uppercase. That's good. That means on blur. Blur means when it loses the focus. On blur, when it loses the focus, we are defining. So on blur, we are defining this. So that means usually what we are doing is on focus, we are entering some name. And here I click outside, it is converted to capital letters and hidden. Again, I click inside it. Again, the message will come. And I am continuing the name and I click outside. It is converted to uppercase. That's good. That's how we can manage. We can manage the options like this. That means how we can get the focus. And on focus and on blur. On focus and on blur. So this is a regular important concept. So we regularly use in validations. So when to display message, when to hide the message. Sometimes messages will display when user clicks a button, means submit or something. But sometimes it should immediately verify once you finish that control. Then we use the focus and blur like options. So this is an example how we can manage the blur and focus. So these are all miscellaneous events. And I don't need to explain change event, because in shopping cart example already I showed you. When we designed shopping cart example, drop down change event already I told you, right? So what is problem? Which one? It is nothing but, so we are collecting the value from text box. We are collecting the value from text box and storing in a variable called txt name. That means whatever name you entered, it is present in which variable? It is present in which variable? Whatever the name you entered in text box, it is now stored in a variable. Which one? txt name. It is stored in txt name. Understood up to that? Yeah. Now what we are doing? So what we are doing, that txt name we are collecting again and converting to uppercase and assigning to the same text box. Understood? First we have to collect the name, na? We have to collect the name. We have to collect the name and we have to convert that and again assign. Right? In that case, we have to collect that name first. After that, convert into uppercase and assign to the same text box again. That is the point here. Right. So that is how we handle this miscellaneous events. Change event, no need to explain change and other event. Already we learned. So while using drop downs and all, we use a change event. Another important event you need to understand is about submit and reset. On submit, on reset. These are important events. Actually, in HTML, we learned one option, submit. Yeah. In HTML, I I told you about buttons. Now you remembered what are generic buttons and non-generic buttons I told you. So two types of buttons are there in HTML. So two types of buttons are there. So generic buttons, non-generic buttons. Actually, in our older versions, in HTML older version, we use input. Input type is equal to button. It is a non-generic button, and we use input type is equal to submit. That is a generic button. Input type is equal to reset. This is a generic button. What is meant by generic buttons? Remember, we learned in HTML. So what is meant by generic buttons? Submit and reset are generic buttons. Generic button means what are generic buttons? Remember that point? What are the generic buttons? What is the purpose of generic buttons? Right. Generic buttons have a predefined functionality. Am I right? So such predefined functionality. Generic buttons have predefined functionality. That means submit button can submit the form. Reset button can reset the form. Predefined functionality. So ready-made, they have a functionality. Those are generic buttons. Now in HTML5, we design that by using button. Button type, so you can give as button, you can give as submit, you can give as reset. With button type, you can manage all of them. If I don't give button type in HTML5, it is treated as by default submit. Understood? Every button that you have designed by default, it is a submit button. By default, it is a submit button. So if you designed by using button, right? So now what happens is inside this we have a form. In the form, so we have a text box. Input type is equal to text, and here we just given ID name as txt name. Okay, and we have buttons. One button. So this type is submit, and I said submit. Another button, so its type is reset, and it is reset. And another button, so the type is button, and it is register. Observe carefully. Now what happens here is, so in this example, when I run this page, you can see that I entered some name and click on register. It's not submitting because it is an ordinary button. It is not a generic button. It doesn't have any functionality. But when I click reset button, it resets the form. Whatever I enter, I click reset button, it resets the form. That's good. That means by default it has functionality. And submit button by default submits the form. You see, it submits in the URL. That means already the buttons are doing some functionality. The buttons are performing certain functionality. Now important is they are handling certain functionality. Now important is that we want some additional functionality, because anywhere we haven't written any event for them. There is no functionality written. You cannot simply submit. So suppose before submitting, we want to ask the user, please verify all the details that you trying to submit. Are you sure you want to reset the form? such confirmations we need or some more extra work we need to do. That means submit button and reset button are default doing some work without defining any functionality for them. But we want some more additional work to perform on submit, on reset. Then you cannot write on click for them because already they are working. Then what we have to do is, so we have to write events for submit and reset inside the form, because submit and reset are submitting the form. So form is defined with these two events called on submit. On submit. So form submit, that is the event I am writing, function. On reset. On reset. So form reset, I am writing like this, reset. That means here the key point is generally when you are defining the events, when you are configuring and defining the events. So on submit, so and on reset are not used for inside the buttons, they are used inside the form. So form contains these two events, so that is on submit and on reset. And these events will fire up. These events will fire up only when user clicks the submit button or reset button. If user clicks any another button, these events will not fire up. They have to be written inside the form. And we are writing that here, script. So we are writing the script and function. So form submit. And form submit, I will just put temporarily an alert. Later in server-side integration, you will learn. When we are working with server-side integration, you will see that we can send this data to server through submit event. We will learn that. Currently, I'm just putting an alert like, so form will submit its data. Okay, just message I am giving. And similarly, I am writing a function, so form reset. So alert saying that form will reset. So now observe carefully. So here, previously by default, they are doing some work. Already they are doing some work. And here I am typing some name and click on reset. Now it will not immediately reset. It will do some additional functionality like form will reset. Okay, that is resets. Now I say, so click here. So register, it is not working because it is not a submit button or reset button. Ordinary buttons will not fire up the form. Only submit and reset buttons will fire up the form. So you click on submit, then it says form will submit its data. Okay, then it submits the data. So already submit and reset buttons have a functionality. In addition to that functionality, if you want to define more functionality, then you have to write these events. That is very regularly used options like submit and reset options. So and on submit, on reset are the events written for form. They are written for form and not for buttons, but they will work with submit and reset buttons. So this is one example for that, right? Where to write the events, how do we configure? Now, when you are using submit button, reset button, make sure that they are inside the form. And form is defined with these options, So this is general one important about the events. These are all the different types of miscellaneous events. Once you know these events here, the same events you have to work across all client-side technologies. Even when you are learning Angular JS, React JS, Vue JS, everywhere, jQuery, everywhere. The events are these. Only the point is sometimes events when are used in other technologies, they will not use the word on copy or on click. They will use just click, or they use just like ng click, something like that. But concept is same. But concept is same, right? Everywhere they will be similar. So that is the reason if you have a good strong knowledge on working with all these types of events, and you can manage that everywhere in the similar way. Right? So the same approach we have to follow actually. That is what these are all the different types of events. So you have three categories I classified there. Now we have key events, we have mouse events, and we have miscellaneous events. Miscellaneous events. Right. Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. So I already told you key code. Remember the key code. You are there in yesterday's class. You can get the key code of print screen and you can display that message. We learned key code. Right. You are talking about screenshot in laptop or mobile. So you can access that, right? Which key they have pressed. Right. So that is general. So if you can access the, so this is the basic of configuring the events, defining the events and working with the events. Another important in the events, we have timer events. We have timer events. Timer events are nothing but timer events are the events which are used for. So timer events are used for timer events are used for handling functions at regular time intervals. This is a very important one. They are used for handling at regular time intervals. At regular time intervals. Timer events are used for handling regular time intervals. That means, for example, suppose why we need these timer events. What are the timer events? Actually, timer events we have set timeout. We have a clear timeout. Clear timeout. So we have like set interval. Set interval. We have like clear interval. Clear interval. So these are the timer related options actually. Set timeout, clear timeout, interval. These are already you have seen them, but you have to know that that is done through timer. For example, you have seen a carousel. In the carousel, you have seen that after every few seconds, slide is changing. That means how it is seconds. That means at regular time intervals, some action is being performed. So that is done by using these timer events. We already learned keyframes, if you remember. In CSS, we learned keyframes. That means in the keyframes, we learned delay time, how much time to delay, how much time, transition time, how much it has to take. This kind of timings we can control dynamically also. CSS also have some timing of related options, but dynamically on click it should work, on drag it should work like that. We can control them, we can configure and control them. These timer events are also very much important, especially when you are working with this. For example, suppose, so means timer events difference points I will tell you. Suppose timer HTML. Here, suppose I am creating so a simple functionality here. So let's create doc type HTML and head and title and say timer. So okay, and in the body, so we can div. We have a heading. So, and ID as a message and align to center. Okay. Now here we are writing a script, and in that we have a function as msg1 says function message1. Okay, in the message1 document get element by ID, we are displaying message. In that we are displaying inner HTML is hello, hello. Okay, that is message1. I will use another message2. In message2 I am writing so another message, how are you? So okay, and another message 3 I am writing here. So some more messages. Remember, all messages are defined. So welcome to JavaScript. All messages are being displayed inside the same MSG heading. And what I will do is body onload. So body load. So when body loads, that means we are writing the function body load. When body loads, I am calling the message1 function and message2 function and message3 function. All three functions are called one after another. We are calling all the messages one after another. Now, when I run this, you can observe that. So first message is hello. Second message is how are you? Third message is welcome to JavaScript. I am running these messages and you can observe that when in the output, you saw the last message. Now, I need one simple clarity like are all the three messages running, are printed or not? Printed or not? All the three messages are printed or not? So all the three messages are printed. All the three messages are printed, but they are so fast in printing that we can't see that. We can see only the last message. I hope you understood. That means the functions will execute so fast. Some functions execute so fast that we can't see them. Within a fraction of millisecond, all the functions are executed. So if the tasks are given so fast, then sometimes problems will come. Suppose if lengthy task is being performed, suppose you see simply generally, what you do is when you are using your computer, so laptop or desktop, or you are using your mobile. Sometimes while using the mobile, suddenly your mobile will hang up or your system will hang up, desktop or laptop will hang up because you double clicked on one option. It's not opening. Actually, it is taking time to open. Not waiting. You are immediately giving other tasks. Again, double click. So many times you have done that. That is generally your habit. You do that. So because you are not waiting, immediately you are giving another work. Due to this kind of tasks, complicated, given into the memory, then memory see that there are so many tasks triggered at a time, then it will simply cease the tasks. That means it will hang up. That means is usually why a computer or a laptop hangs up. 90% reason because you don't know how to operate it. So you can't complain that so system is hanging up because some problem is there in the system. Some problem is not there in the system. The problem is there in the tasks that you are giving to it. Right? The tasks giving to it. Right? That is regular problem actually. From everybody we face this issue. Generally what they do is they give the tasks and they will not wait for it. Due to that, it seizes them. That is the reason as a developer what we should do is when tasks are given so fast, then we can lock them. we can keep them in the memory waiting for some time. Is to the process. That means when we give the task, we will not give immediately to process. We will not immediately give to the process. That means suppose this is processor. So we have a processor. Suppose we have this process. So this is the process. That is processor, right? And we have tasks. We have the task. So that means we have task one. So, and we have task two like this. We have some tasks. So we have the tasks, task one and task two. Now what happens is, so this is the memory. This is the memory. So we have the memory. So memory. Now what we do is, generally when task is bigger, what we do is we load these tasks. We load this task into memory. We load this task into memory. After loading the tasks into memory, next step what we do is, so we will send one task into process. When the task is being performed, we will keep the second task waiting. We will not send it immediately. We will keep it waiting. So until this task is finished. Once this task is finished, then it is finished. Then we will release the second one. We will release the second one into the process. It is good. So that means during this time, that means when task one is there, it is completing. Almost it is time. I can send another task into it. So this is the good way of managing your tasks. Otherwise, now that is how we manage the tasks. Generally, many times you might have heard multitasking. Computer have the ability of multitasking, performing more than one task at a time. So you might have heard about that, right? But there is no multitasking in computing system. In really, there is no multitasking. That means there is no multitasking in computing system. So that means tasks are performed one after another only, not all at a time. But it is so fastly performed that you will feel like all are performed at a time. But actually all are not performed at a time, one after another only performed. So there is nothing like multitasking in reality actually. All tasks are performed one after another, not simultaneously at the same time. So that is very important to understand. So, but it looks like multitasking. It looks like multitasking. That is a general thing. That is a general concept actually. So the point is, so processor will share the time in so fast that it can handle it. So, and you will feel like more than one task is being performed actually. So, but that is the point about multiple tasks are running at the fraction of a second. We can delay the time. That's what we have to do now. What we can do is, now we can use the function. So we can use the function called set timeout. Set timeout. So set timeout is a function. So it asking which function you want to execute. Message 1 is the function. Message 1 is the function. Okay, how much time you want it to keep in the memory? I want this to be in the memory for 2000 milliseconds. So that means now what we are doing is we are giving this function to timeout event. This timeout event will load this into memory and keep waiting for 2 seconds. Similarly, now the same thing I have to do, set timeout. So we need to say set timeout. Set timeout, message 2. So for 4000 milliseconds. 4000 milliseconds. And set timeout for message 3. Message 3, I want as some 6000 milliseconds. 6000 milliseconds. So 1000 milliseconds equal to 1 second. That is how the timing we have defined. Now see what happens. That means you are saying that load all these into memory at a time. but don't run all of them at a time. Keep them waiting for some time. Then see what happens now. All these are loaded into memory. First message is released into memory. When first message is released into process, others are locked. They are kept waiting. Once the first is finished, then second, then third will come. You can observe this now. When I run this, when I run refresh this, you can see the first message will come hello. After how are you? After that, welcome to JavaScript. That means we are delaying the process. We are delaying the process. So timeout is used for locking the process functions and keeping them in the memory for some time and releasing them after that particular time, so that it will allow the processor to perform the other tasks properly. So it will not disturb that. That's what actually the timeout function is. Now we can set timeout, we can clear timeout, we can manage so many things. We can set timeout, we can clear timeout, we can manage so many things, right? How we can handle, so the other options, how we can use this in our real world applications, we will see. We will create one simple slideshow like options and handle them, right? How we can design with slideshow like options and use them, right? So then tomorrow we'll continue with that. Tomorrow we will see some examples on this timeout, right? Timeout functions. Tomorrow is not no off. We have session tomorrow. Saturday. On Saturday we will not have the session, right? Tomorrow we will have the session. Is it okay with everyone? Right? Tomorrow no holiday. Tomorrow we will have the session as usual, right? I hope everyone is okay with that, right? Right. And on Saturday, we will not have the session, right? Saturday, we will not have the session. Tomorrow, we'll continue with that. Okay. Right. Tomorrow, we will have the session. We'll continue with this. Right. Tomorrow, we will see some examples on working with these timer events. Huh? Right. Yeah. Same time. Tomorrow, same time. Same time, same ID, everything same. Huh? Okay.